Hello, welcome to the Learning Pro, a brand new daily series hosted by me, Cath Ellis, going behind the scenes of my life as a learning experience designer. We're going to be discussing all things to do with e-learning design, and I'm going to give you practical tips that you can use every single day. We'll be live several times a week. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Cath Ellis. I'm a freelance learning designer. I run a boutique e-learning company in Melbourne, Australia. I'm originally from the UK, and I basically design and develop end-to-end services for clients all across the globe. Now, if you're watching right now, go ahead and leave comments in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from. I've got a very, very special guest with me today, and I'm really excited to welcome her. Her name is Emma Pawson. Hello, Emma.
Hello.
Great to have you. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Oh my gosh, this is the first time I've done anything like this, so it's a bit scary. Hello, everyone. I'm Emma, like Kath said. I'm also from the UK. I'm from Wales, so that's what the funny accent is. I'm also a learning designer and live in Melbourne, Australia also.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking, Emma, about questions to ask in a client kickoff meeting. And this is something we've been talking about for a little while, and how it can kind of make or break your meeting with it can make or break a project, right? If you don't ask the right questions. So let's just have a chat, right? So what's your experience been? Have you always gone into a client meeting alone, or have you gone in with a team of people?
It has varied, and as you know, my career as a learning designer has predominantly been working for other companies as a subcontractor. So in that instance, because I'm, I guess, second in command in that instance, because I am a subcontractor, yes, I have gone in with other people, and that might be a project manager or a senior learning designer. And sometimes if the company is quite small, I've even gone in with the CEO of the company. But I have been also running my own kickoff meetings more recently. And I think having that experience with others has been super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I thought I'd be actually very nervous going in and doing my own, because when I worked for an agency, there would be a team of us going into kickoff meetings, whether they were done via Zoom or whether they were done face-to-face. You know, you'd have the project manager, you'd have the digital designer, you'd have myself, you might have someone from the LMS at that stage. So yeah, I'd love for us to chat about on the perspective of maybe going in doing a freelance gig. So how we go about when someone reaches out to us and they're wanting a piece of work, some of the questions that we have to think about to cover ourselves.
Yeah, I'm happy to go about that, but I wanted to ask you one thing, because I have worked across a few different agencies and with various types of people, and also as a freelancer, I've had a look at templates that are out there. I wanted to get your perspective on what you think the kickoff meeting is, because I've heard it being called the project brief meeting. I've heard it being called the discovery meeting. So I wouldn't mind getting a bit of an insight into what you think a kickoff meeting is about.
Yeah, absolutely. So normally a kickoff for me is that I've already got the gig. You know, I've had a client reach out to me. They have obviously given me a brief of what's going on. But now this is normally the first time I sit down and I meet with the whole team, with their whole team. So it might just have been one SME that I've met with and I've spoken to. And you're right, these words, discovery meeting, kickoff, client brief, yeah, they're all the same, right? So what I'm essentially trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that the client feels comfortable with me. And in a way, I'm just getting it from, you could say, the horse's mouth, exactly what's going on in the business. And it's an opportunity to dig deep. So especially during times like COVID, and we don't know when this is going to kind of change, you know. I'm just seeing if we've got any questions. We haven't got any questions yet. That's okay. I'm just thinking about, these are going to be done virtually. And then this client kickoff is really the time now to really make sure that you understand everything about the job. And it is also an opportunity for you to really hone in and give them the solution, because a lot of the time, Emma, I actually don't do requests for proposals and give them the solution right there and then. I might chat to them and give them a quote. Well, within this budget, this is what I can do, but I can do a lot of things with that. And then in the discovery, I sit and I actually brainstorm the idea with them. So in a way, they're not dictating to me what they want. I'm saying, well, okay, let's work out exactly what you've done in the past. What do your learners like? Have you done any evaluation? What does that evaluation data say? Yeah, so that's all I'm doing. I'm trying to give them confidence that I'm the right person for that job.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page in that sense, as to what we're trying to achieve in a kickoff. Before we get into the questions, I just wanted to ask you, how long are your kickoff meetings normally in time? Like, how long would you be there for?
I wouldn't be there for more than an hour normally. I don't really, I'm a waffler, so I can go on for quite a long time, but I think an hour we try and knock it on the head.
All right, cool.
What about you?
It will depend on whether they're giving me what I need. And that'll probably be something we'll come to later about what happens after the kickoff. But if I need to spend a little bit more just to dial down and to get what I need, I will. And it also depends on what they've given me beforehand, like if they've sent me documentation and how robust that information is before and the conversations that I've before. But yeah, I think for me, predominantly what I want to get out of it is that to make sure that we're all on the same page before going too far down the rabbit warren, and also to build that rapport and that trust, I think, with the client, and setting expectations. I use it for that as well. So yeah, I think a lot comes out of that kickoff meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going in and I'm asking them, okay, what exactly is going on with your business? How much work has been done on, has anything been done? Have you got a policy? Have you got anything in place that I can use? Is there any materials that are ready?
I think on that note as well, I've seen a really cool question that comes on the back of that. So the client might think they've got some resources to give you, whether it be a policy or just Word documents or PowerPoint or whatever it might be. I've seen a really cool question that I've now tagged onto the back of that is, what state of readiness would you consider those documentation to be? And I think that's a really clever question because, they'll guide our storyboards at the end of the day. So that's been really interesting to ask those questions to a client where, okay, so are these documents done? Are they classed as signed off? And then to see them kind of squirm and go, kind of, I think that's a really good question to ask because it might trip you up later down the track.
Absolutely. And I know for myself, I won't even start a project until someone's got that content ready.
Yeah.
Because you need something to work with, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's really important. I've got a list of some questions that I don't know if it would be better to just put them on the screen and for us to have a chat. Let me see if I can do this right.
I know you've also shown me that. You might want to take that little heading. Yeah, there you go. I know you've shown me these before, and I think what's really important to kind of understand that when you're collecting your questions is that there are resources out there. And, you know, I think I've looked at least 3 sets of questions, and you'll start figuring out what works for you as well. Like, I've seen your questions before, and, you know, when you're starting out, you've no idea. So I think sharing them like this is really helpful.
Yeah, you know, I worked at a place that did a really great kind of 1-page A3 document, and they styled it with kind of these why, how, who, what, when, you know, but I tend to, you know, I tend to kind of, yeah, I mean, I think there's more than this, but we can go through and kind of chat about them.
Yeah,
and what we can do is we can even make changes and add to them. So if there are any that are missing, and we can add this to the resources we can add it to YouTube. So anyone who wants it, they can access it. I think they'll find that useful.
Could you just zoom in a little bit, Cath?
Yeah, that is a good question, whether I can do that.
Oh, maybe it doesn't matter if you can't, because you'll be posting them afterwards, but you'll be reading them out as well, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. Okay. Are you finding it hard to see it? Is it small?
Well, I've got them on my side anyway, so I can see them.
Okay. So first of all, you know, I try and dig deep on what's currently happening with your business. You know, what are your current challenges right now? And I want to kind of talk a little bit about what they're trying to achieve for the future, you know? So whether it's a program like, it could be a new policy that's come in from the government, let's say coronavirus, for example, you know, so what are your current challenges? What are future challenges? So, you know, I always use language when I'm in a kickoff meeting with clients, like, we want to future-proof this, okay? So that they know that I'm not giving them something that can't be updated easy. And, you know, I kind of hate, you know, seeing people working on a project that's just going to be really difficult to update, especially with things like coronavirus, you know. So I then talk about what are your expectations.
Yeah, I think to add to the expectations, sorry to cut across you there. One thing that I've picked up on even early on in my career was that the expectation of the people in the room might differ. So you might have spoken to, like you said, the subject matter expert, or perhaps the L&D manager, and they might have an expectation, but quite quickly, if you start digging down a little bit, saying, you know, what are the SME's expectations? What's the CEO's expectations? What are the learner's expectations? I think you start finding out that what are your expectations becomes quite a robust question. And if you do have a good selection of people in the room, making them agree on what that expectation is quite interesting to see them netting that out with you. And I think that's why the kickoff meeting is so important.
Oh, absolutely. You know, really puts them on the spot and gets them to have the conversation themselves, because it's something that I think a last minute thing, you know, getting them all in the room. This is it now. This is it happening. So a lot of the time I find people haven't prepared for that point. And
I've also asked there as well, you know, what's your expectation of me? Especially if we're working closely with the internal learning design team, and that maybe they called us in to fill in maybe a deficit in, I don't know, you know, the amount of people they've got in the team, just to fill that need. I've also wanted to kind of lay that on the line quite early on as well. And I found that quite helpful. And it also helps me understand what they expect of me in the project. And I've asked that as well, which is not always on my list. It depends on where I'm at with the client, I think.
Mm. And this is going to be different as well if you've worked with a client before. You know, a kickoff meeting is going to be, you're going to understand a lot about the client already. So it might be more focused on, you know, the project itself rather than digging deep into what's happening with the business right now.
Yeah, that's it.
And some of these questions as well are not in the order that I would ask. So the things like the technology and the visual approach and how you would measure the success of the program, I would tend to actually do last. That's actually the last thing that I would ask.
And I think it's important that, you know, it's good to come prepared, but you'll also find that depending on the direction of the conversation, that these things all might blend into one. And, you know, being strict on your order can sometimes hamper you from getting some really valuable information. So yeah, I mix it up. I go with the feeling of the vibe in the room. And if I feel it's getting a little bit stagnant and slow, I'll go back to my questions list.
Yeah, absolutely. So the who, let's chat about the stakeholders, right? So I know we've chatted about this before, and I'm a bit stricter than other people with regards to the way that I work with stakeholders. So
yeah,
I actually tell them straight up, I will only work with one person. I will not work with multiple people, because I don't know about you, but in the past, I've had rounds of feedback that are like, Bob says this and Anne says this, you know, even on a Word document, how they've, you know, given feedback. And then I go back to the SME and I say, can you just explain what Bob meant by this? And they say, I don't know. So that is so frustrating to have all these different points of views. What's even worse is when the SME doesn't agree with something that another one of their stakeholders has suggested. So I say that all feedback has to actually come through one person.
Is that sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, is that person normally the person that would have the sign-off capabilities, Cath?
Yeah. But then that's just the way I work, and it tends to work quite well. I find that it hasn't happened many times since I've been a freelancer, but one time it did. I was working with a client who was doing a big rollout of a piece of technology and needed to actually go internationally. So handed part of that component over to her next in line and said, you know, you'll be in safe hands. I trust decisions that are made. And then basically when she reviewed it, she said, oh no, you know, I'd like to give some feedback here. And I said, well, this is why I don't normally change stakeholders midway through, because we're communicating well. And obviously you were kept in the loop of all decisions that were made. And now that someone else is making decisions, no, it's hard. So
I also think another classic scenario in that instance is that halfway through the project, they've all of a sudden been either decided that other people needed to have a look, that they may have overlooked the stakeholder group, or all of a sudden someone in a senior position might want to have a look at the content, and it completely derails the project. That's another way that the stakeholder, and I think it's really good stakeholder management. I think it's a great tip, and I try and take that forward. You know, one of my projects at the moment only really has 2 people anyhow. So I'm happy to receive feedback from 2 of them. But then I've worked with them in the past, so we have already established a good relationship.
Yeah.
So I think it swings and roundabouts, but I also try and take forward what your tips in that instance.
Yeah. See, I use Trello to manage my stuff, and I put all of the stakeholders onto Trello so that it's very, very transparent, all of the conversations. So if someone actually isn't looking at that, I kind of go, well, I can't do any more than the fact that you've been tagged in all these messages and you haven't looked at it. But generally, if you're really strict like that and you say, okay, well, I'm going to put your whole team on there, and if you don't want to look at it, then that's fine. But this is a very transparent conversation. I don't have conversations via email. I have conversations via Trello.
Yeah, and then do you put these questions in Trello?
Pardon?
Are these questions in Trello? Like if the client wanted to have a look at them, they're available for your client? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so these questions are also, I've actually just cut and pasted them out of Trello into Notion. But you can, I mean, I'm playing around with using Notion instead of Trello at the moment.
Cool.
But it's, yeah.
So I think a question from Ben in the chat, Cath.
Let's have a look.
Yeah, our first question. Yeah.
I've got a question. My goodness, Ben. Hello. Do you prep the attendees about the purpose of the kickoff prior to the meeting? Yeah, I do. What about you, Emma?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts to that question. So when I'm organizing the meeting, like calendar invite, I'll put a bit of an agenda in there, which will cover what we'll cover. And I sometimes send the questions to them if I do have it in a document, or give them a bit of a synopsis of what we'll cover. And quite often we've had a telephone conversation beforehand. So like you said, Cath, we've already established a bit of a rapport. So I will also add it to Trello like you do. I follow quite a lot of what you do, so it's also in there. But yeah, definitely. I think it's important with any meeting that you're going into with a client that you do prep them, because they might not come prepared otherwise to answer the questions. So yeah, I certainly do.
And because I put these on Trello, they actually already see on that day what I'm going to be asking them. So it gets them to think a little bit, whether they do or they don't. At least I'm being very transparent with what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And because it's a template that I use for Trello, and we'll do maybe we'll even do another session, Emma, and talk about how we manage our projects.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, but
on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put them back.
Yeah,
Here
cool.
we go.
Yeah, I think it's
a question though, Ben. If you've got any more questions, just jump on and ask.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so so I want to make sure that I'm understanding who are going to be the members of the stakeholder or the project management team. Who are the stakeholders going to be?
Yeah.
Obviously, if I've not worked with them, I want to get a good idea of their department. And for the likes of, the project that I did with the TAC for the fallout, I dug deep on what e-learning have you done before with your department, and what did you like and what don't you like,
So is that kind of establishing like what they think good looks like?
Yeah, it's really interesting because everyone's very different. But you can honestly, I've gone and I've met with clients who said we're doing way too many videos in the organization, so we don't want it to have any videos. Okay, that's great. If they're over it, then obviously other learners are going to be over things. And that's when you can toy with new ideas, like I did with TAC, talking about, they had a fraud and corruption course focused on information loss. And I suggested a kind of hybrid e-learning podcast. and they loved it. And that was in that kickoff meeting. So I knew that I had pitched them a certain budget, and I'm pitching them ideas that I know that I can work within that budget at that stage. And of course, I'm talking about who are the audience of the course at this point, because if they're saying it's for everyone, well, you're really going to focus on pitching that at the lowest,
skill level.
Lowest skill level, language level, education level. So those are kind of questions that I ask as well. What age range? Do you have any English as a second language? A whole variety of questions. Do you have any staff members who have disabilities, who need screen readers and things like that? So that's a good point at that stage to ask these questions.
Yeah, so do you do a persona as well, Cath, or do you just keep it within this kickoff meeting?
Say that again, Emma?
I was just wondering whether you had like a separate persona document that you covered as well, or do you just try and cover it within this kickoff meeting?
I really try and cover it within the kickoff meeting. I think there's certain the certain times that you can go deeper with personas.
Yeah.
I at the moment I try and put together a couple, but I'm not doing workshops on it. I'm not going too deep into personas.
We can talk about that in another chat, I'm sure, but I was just wondering whether you had like a separate time. But yeah, it's good to touch base about the learners at this point as well.
I mean, remember, at this stage, this is just the kickoff. I might move on to a workshop after that in which I go deeper. So the likes of TAC for the Fallout, I basically did a workshop and we workshopped the whole story. And
I think that's the thing I was going to ask you. Do you do something after this? Would you do a workshop every time?
Not every time. Sometimes it can be fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
But then if it's an organization that I'm not too comfortable with, I don't understand the ins and outs, it's actually a great way for you to get your content working in a way that they're really happy with it as well.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you've come out of a kickoff meeting and you're about to go into a learning strategy, especially being a freelancer, you don't have other people to bounce ideas off, to actually be able to go back to the company and say, can I do a couple of hours just working through this content with you? Just gives you so much more confidence and you learn so much more about the topic in that time. So if I can do a workshop, I will. If it's someone international, that can make it quite difficult. But now, I mean, what used to be kind of classed as difficult isn't anymore because everyone's doing everything, online. What about you? You tend to, if you're working on a project, do you tend to go and do a workshop and spend time with the SME to break down the content, or is that not possible?
It does vary, like what you said. It depends on the level of complexity, but and again, it depends on how good the content is that they provide. I'd say more often than not, workshopping, absolutely, especially if we're building out scenarios, for example, definitely would workshop then. But coming back to what you were saying about, doing them over Zoom, how do you record the information that you get, the answers you get? Do you take notes in the session? Like, how do you record the answers they give you?
Yeah, I take notes. I just say to them, I'm just making notes as I go along. They're fine with that. I mean, sometimes you can record the session. I've record it. I've said to a client just with my iPhone, hey, can I just record this? And just means that I kind of don't have to worry about taking notes, and I can write everything up and put it onto Trello, and they're happy with that.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time I can make notes.
Yeah, I like the recording option. And I think that's the great thing about doing it via Zoom or, whatever software you're using. Because so many times I've gone back to a recording just to listen through how they've explained it. And I'm just not too sure that my note taking is as good as hearing it from them again. So I do like the recording, but I've also been a part of kickoffs where I've had a colleague with me, or just getting the actual client and the stakeholders involved as well, like just post-it notes or whatever it might be.
We've got another question from Ben.
Ooh.
Okay, so Ben says, do you take steps to validate what you hear in the kickoff? If so, how? So I definitely do, Ben. I'll do my answer first, okay?
Here you go.
So when I come out of a kickoff meeting, I do a learning strategy document. And that learning strategy, I sound like I've got a lisp. Learning strategy document, I actually pretty much interpret what we talked about in that meeting. And that's where I'll come up with, so I'll basically interpret that into the document, and that's where I'll come up with the instructional design approach that I'm going to take, the digital design approach. Talk about any technological issues within the company. It's basically a cover my arse document, okay? But it also, Emma's laughing here, right? But what it also does is, I'm going to turn this off so we can see each other, Emma. What it also does is it just really confirms to the client. She gets it, she understands. The client obviously has an opportunity to give feedback and make changes if I haven't interpreted anything, but that's it. That's the approach locked in with the learning strategy, and that's me now moving on to the next step, which is the course overview. So I hope that answered your question. If you have more questions, though, let us know, Ben. What about you, Emma?
Yeah, very much the same, Cath. I think it's really important. It's setting those foundations, isn't it? There's no point in us diving straight into designing our high-level design or anything without actually confirming whether they have the system capabilities to host what we're designing. So yeah, definitely confirming everything. Like you said, cover your ass. I like that.
You've just got to do it. So we've got here the what. Okay, yeah. So what are the learning outcomes? What are the course topics, learning objectives? Where is the content currently located? What resources are available? So we kind of talked about that before ourselves. Sometimes you will have a client who has nothing. And sometimes you will have a client who will have policies and procedures. A lot of the time, I find training is required when new policies come out. That's, they've got a new approach. It could even be something that's been implemented by the government. Australia is, brilliant at kind of bringing these policies out, and then all of the government departments go scrambling. They need to do e-learning and things like that.
Yeah,
it doesn't always need to be e-learning, but what's your experience, Emma?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it varies, but it genuinely varies. I think depending on how much content they give us will depend on whether I workshop it. If they're just giving me a policy and I need more, they definitely would need to go into something else after that. But I'm also quite happy if they've got existing course material. I'm happy to sit through and analyze that myself and and go through that. So it definitely depends on what they give us. But I think going back to where is it located? Can I get to it? For example, they might have it on their intranet and you can't get to that as a contractor. Information like that could trip you up before you've even started, I think is really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm distracted because Ben said thanks, and I want to acknowledge him. No worries, Ben. Any more questions? Drop us a line. Absolutely. And I find that the workshops I can actually overcome that information loss just by spending a few hours with the client.
Yeah.
Or we can put in parameters for what they need to do to get information over to me, and how we're going to work together.
Yeah, like one of the courses I'm working on at the moment is a redesign of something that's just built in Moodle. So I needed access to the LMS. They actually needed to give me access to log in and have a look at it. And luckily they were quite happy. Some clients might not be happy with that. They don't want you to go snooping. But these guys have given me access to their LMS and I get to have a look at it. And they've even given me, learner access and editing educator access, so I can have a look at it from the dev side as well. So in that instance, I've been really lucky.
Everything. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what else we've got. So I think at this stage, I would probably be going to the how. So talking a little bit about, and sometimes I ask these questions, what visual approach are we taking? Does the department or the organization have a style guide that they absolutely need you to follow, or are they happy you coming up with a design? And
how does that question go with clients for you, Cath? I feel like sometimes they don't know what you mean by that. I don't want to go too off course, but I've brought this question up before and I said, do you want illustrations? Do you want photography? And they've gone, huh? So sometimes they're not equipped to answer that question, which is quite nice. And you can take that creative flair. And then other instances, they've been like, we have a really strict style guide and do not deviate from XYZ color scheme, for example. How do you find that question goes down?
So I'm very, very prepared when I sit with a client. So I have a little, let's see if I have it here.
Love to see it. Any tips on this question would be awesome.
So I either have like a hard book with examples that I actually got given when I left the company as a gift, and I can show them different things.
I love that.
Another thing that I do is I just have examples from my portfolio.
Yeah.
Now, for example, TAC have a very, very strong brand. However, I was able to do the Fallout, which was a very grungy, dirty, fraudy looking. So a lot of the time it's coming up with some ideas and saying to them, I can still follow your brand. However, I can give it a theme. I can give it a look and feel. If someone's wanting beyond videos, or they're wanting, it could be a glide app. It could be something like that. I can say, well, look, I can still use your brand in there. Do you have assets? A lot of companies do understand like a brand guideline. Even more difficult, what they don't understand is, a written guideline, style guide, so that can be a little bit more difficult. But again, it's part of that design conversation. And I say, well, look, I'm just going to follow Australian standards, or if it's another country, I'll say, you need to let me know what standard you want me to follow. But a lot of them will just go with what I recommend. Yeah. What about you?
That's a good tip in terms of taking stuff with you, because before and in the past, my work has always been working with a graphic designer, and they would handle that side of it. So broadening out myself now and heading out by myself, I think I've been tripped up by that question where I haven't been prepared enough to show them things. So that's a lesson learned for me, that, moving forward, I need to be more prepared to show them examples, or have them provide something that the vibe that they want to go for. And another thing I think is quite good to point out at this point is whether this is going to be custom. Because if you're opening up that kind of worms with them about visual design, it's about, okay, so within the parameters of the scope, I think it's good to have a chat about that at this point. And you might have established that before, but it's good to reiterate, we're using stock imagery here. So when you're thinking about how customized you want that to be, think about within the parameters of using stock images or stock illustrations. And I think that's important at this point to bring that up.
And that's where I sometimes will make that clear in my proposal.
Yeah.
They
forget
so
to say.
No, again, it's just covering yourself, right? So do you know what you could do? You could even have a PowerPoint document with loads of different styles. I mean, if you think about all there's great suites of imagery that you can buy, whether it's that blush suite from Pablo Stanley, he's got humans, you've got stories from Free Pick, you've got loads. I mean, again, you can do what Devlin Peck has done. He's got relationships with designers that he reaches out and he understands how much it will cost to have certain assets made. So it's good as a designer to be able to go out and get quotes. And I've reached out before to designers and I have an idea of how much it costs. So you just put it into your proposal so you can offer them something absolutely customized. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's a great tip, especially if you've got some really interesting topics where stock imagery just wouldn't cut it. Because so people are so visual and the expectations of the visual design are so high now, just from what we see on the web and stuff. The expectations of the visuals, I think, are pretty up there. So I think getting that right early on is good. And then the example I gave you, I actually did ask a graphic designer, my friend who's freelancing. I was like, how about putting together a little mood board for me for this, because I've just tripped myself up. So that type of stuff, I think, you learn as you go, but moving forward, I would be more prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to consider as well what I can't do, right? So, something that I just go, this is really going to take me too long to work out how to do. So you go and you get quotes and, you make that clear. Yeah. What technology are we going to use? So that's another thing that you really want to make sure that you've got clarified by them. Now, when I talk about technology, I ask them, where's the learner going to do it? Are they going to be doing it on a desktop or are they going to be doing it remotely? If it's somewhere like JB Hi-Fi that are needing e-learning for their staff, well, their staff don't have desktop computers, but they likely have a phone and they likely have a tablet, maybe. So, it's asking these questions and identifying what's going to be the best solution and setting that, making sure that they understand that if you want something super engaging, then it's not going to work on a mobile phone, So I generally now build nearly everything that looks like an app. And I tend to use language that isn't, I don't use the word e-learning. I hate that word. So I use like a learning app or a learning moment or something like that. Just sounds a bit sexier.
I think it's a conversation for a different day about e-learning, but yeah, it certainly has had a bad rap. And if you can use different language to bring your stakeholders on board, I think that's really good. And at this stage, I do often ask about accessibility as well, because that can completely changes the way you design stuff. So I think it's important to ask that up front. And if you're doing animations or video, what are the learner's needs and the technology? For example, one of the sites I've worked at before, they had desktops, but they didn't have sound, audio capabilities. That completely derails your learning experience right there if you have video or voiceover. So it's so important to understand the landscape.
It's been interesting. I saw a piece of learning that someone was. It was something like Rise, and they were asking, "Can I put closed captions in?" And I just feel like, when I try and explain to a client about why mobile learning is limited, right? And it doesn't have to be limited. We play games on the phone, but I try and explain to them, think about how we use the internet every day. You don't see us having the internet read out every single word on us on the screen, so yeah, that's another story though. That's another.
I think what you're touching on there is really important, is that the kickoff meeting is so much more than just answering these questions. It's an education, as in we are educating the client as well. Absolutely. And setting these expectations early on. I think it's such an important meeting. Have you ever, or would you ever skip this meeting, Cath?
No.
No.
Always. I as well won't skip a storyboard. So I say to people that I feel like it's like building a house. So you wouldn't just go and build a house. You would have that meeting about how do you want your house built? And then you would build maybe a floor plan, a blueprint, right? And I say the storyboard is actually a blueprint, because I always say, if you just went and built a house and then you went, I want it to be 4 bedrooms. Well, that 4th bedroom is going to have to be somewhere weird, like on the back of the house, or it's going to have to be a room that's made smaller. So it just never works out. So this is why I think you always need to plan. And I get a bit astonished sometimes when people are like, I don't storyboard, I just go straight to build. And I go, well, the amount of revisions you must do, because I tend to be able to do the storyboard, knock that out, and then go and build happy days.
Yeah, so what you're saying in summary is don't skip your process. And, some clients will make it a bit harder for you to get this kickoff meeting. Might try and get the stakeholders in the room or even in the Zoom room. It's not, for me, it wouldn't be a negotiable. It's that foundations. And for me, it's building that rapport. And for me, also, it's about educating the client. There's so much that happens in that kickoff meeting that I couldn't possibly skip it. They might try and be cheeky and say, let's just skip that kickoff meeting or the learning strategy to save some money. But for me, it's a bit of a non-negotiable, unfortunately.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've got a few more. I'm just saying, if you've got any questions, jump on and ask them for us. Okay, so normally the last thing I ask is, how will you measure the success of the program? But I just want to quickly jump down here and say, when does the course need to be delivered? So you would know that already. but you just reiterate it because you wouldn't put a proposal in for someone who wants a course in, you know, a week, unless, you know, it's something very small or a update or a change. What availability do we have to the SME? So I make sure I understand, are you going on vacation? What dates? You know, anything that is going to limit you from having access to SMEs. And I hear horror stories where people say, oh, the SME hasn't been available. Well, if you identify this right from the beginning, you can put it in your timeline. Like I literally, my next step after doing the kickoff is I do my learning strategy and I give them the timeline for the whole project. And I factor in their time off because I go, well, if you're away for 2 weeks, you know, and I need you to sign something off within that time, well, that's going to have to push out, you know. So they have to see that.
Oh yeah, you carry on.
No, they have to see that they have to be serious about that.
Yeah, and I think for me on that note, it's an awesome question to ask, and also it's setting that expectations. I think sometimes clients think, oh, they can hand you over a policy and expect you to write, you know, robust scenarios. Like, sure, we're creative people, we can meet them in the middle, but we need someone internal who's the expert that can validate that. And I think that setting those expectations of, you know, when you might need SME input, or when they might need to come along to meetings or wherever it might be, is important to set those expectations early on.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up with how will you measure the success of this program? I'm just going to tell you that every time I ask someone this question, Emma, what do they say to me?
Oh, it's probably something about it won't be skill based. It'll probably be they'll be better at doing X or Y, Z, or it'll be something really vague, no doubt.
Yeah, it'll be if they've done it. Yeah, we will measure success on this if people have completed it.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone is trained in it now.
And this is where it kind of goes back to Kathy Moore with action mapping and talking about you want to put an actual value in this. So, you know, if you're doing a project that's focused on onboarding, well, you might say, well, we'll measure the retention rate. So if we reduce the retention rate by 50% by this time next year, and I always say this to clients because I say, if you have no measurement, how are you going to go back to your boss and say, hey, I want more money to do another training program because that was really kick-ass and it worked, and we measured it on, you know, reducing the amount of workplace incidents by 50% in the next 4 months, you know? And normally, because this, and you were right before, because this is an educational thing, we're educating the client, they're normally like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So, you know.
I like the idea of selling it to them as, you know, a way of them, because it, you know, normally this is an investment, isn't it, for your client? They're investing money in you and this process. So by selling it to them as, you know, let's put in a really good tangible goal here so that we can use it, to leverage the next project. I think that's a really cool way about framing it.
What do you do? What's your...
Yeah, I mean, trying to do all of the above and setting goals during a kickoff can be quite hard. That's why I asked you how long you're in there for. That could be a separate whole workshop, you know, in just setting their goals. But I try and think of it as, you know, people are really familiar with setting SMART goals. So try and bring it back to that, because they might also give us something super unrealistic. And I might send them away with a little bit of homework, have a think about this and come back to me on it, because it might not be something we can address because we're trying to cover so much. But yeah, I won't walk away accepting something vague, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest question for them to answer. And you're right, sending them away. So I will normally say, okay, well, if this is something that's a gap, we need to get it so that I can fill out the learning strategy. And I tell them it's all based on, I need it for this document. And that's it, it's set in stone. And what you really want to kind of be doing is saying, well, this was the foundation, and now we're going to do the course overview. And if you want to start changing things in the learning strategy, well, we're now out of scope because this is what we decided we were going to do.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, out of scope is another whole conversation as well. But
yeah, definitely.
Is there anything you think we're missing off this list?
The only thing that I think I've added along the way was how complete or how ready are the material. So it's more the secondary question that comes as a result of these. And then I put additional notes for myself, but I think that's because, I'm still trying to come up with my own set of questions, if you like, but specifically asking about, video usage. I have prompts, I guess, to just add-ons to these, but I think they're really robust, and there's only a certain amount that you can cover, but giving them up front so the client can see them before they come is awesome for being prepared and efficient in your meeting. But no, that's it really. I think we've covered so much already, and we've been jibber-jabbering for long enough.
I know, we said we were going to do this in 30 minutes, so we're nearly an hour. But what we'll do, guys, is I'll upload this Notion link, pop it in the YouTube comments and comments in the description, and you can jump on, you can have a look, and hopefully this has been some help. We're going to be continuing to do the Learning Pro Live, and we're going to have lots of different guests. We're going to have Emma on again. We're going to have Troy Ashman. I'm saying his name wrong.
Yeah, I think it is Ashman.
We're going to have Shirlene, and we're going to have Amanda, our little crew, and we're going to, talk about all variety of things. So this has gone out today to Periscope, which is Twitter. It's gone out to Facebook, and it's gone out to YouTube. So jump on, leave us your comments. We'll jump in again, and we'll certainly answer your comments. It's been fun, hasn't it, Emma?
Yeah, I've loved it. Thank you so much for having me. I was nervous, Nancy, before we started, but we've had Ben following us all the way through. So that obviously shows we haven't been talking too much rubbish.
See, what a superstar. Ben, yay! Well, we hope you've enjoyed it, Ben. We've loved having you here, and we're going to try I'm going to try and do another live stream tomorrow. Not sure what topic. If Troy Ashman is available, then hopefully it will be on Glide apps.
That's so cool. I'll be definitely tapping into that because you guys are insane on Glide app, and I am not insane on Glide app. So I'll be definitely tuning in, and thanks for having me, Cath. It's been really awesome.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Emma. Say goodbye to the audience.
Bye.